Hello, everyone. Back when I was around middle school age, my sister had to read a book for school that she didn't like very much. So after she was done with it, it was given to me, and I read it and loved it. So that book was Esperanza Rising by Pam Moniz Ryan. It's a book about a Mexican girl who immigrates to the United States after a tragedy happens in her home. And the book is basically her trying to cope with the responses of trying to adjust to the new life. It's a very emotional book. Esperanza is an incredible protagonist and very sentimental. But what makes this book different than other books from my childhood is I learned a new craft by reading this book. There's no pattern in it. You can see it's like a chapter book. Literally the only additional writing besides the font are my sister's scribblings from when she had to study it. But Pam Moniz Ryan did a good enough job of describing her characters making yarn dolls that I was able to figure it out. And I did find the page in which she has her characters make the yarn dolls. And I'm not sure how I figured out from this particular segment how to do it, unless it was described earlier in the book, which I have not found that part yet. But I still remember how to make yarn dolls even 10 years later, so that's what I'm going to do for you guys today. So I got a fun skein of yarn, or a fun ball of yarn, because I wrapped it from the skein, and I'm going to make a yarn doll from it. So when you start making a yarn doll, the first thing you do is you usually get a friend to help you. It's typically a communal type of craft because you need someone to hold the hands out to form the base of the yarn. But I tend to be very independent and do things on my own, so I figured out I could get the same result if I wrap it around my feet. So I wore lovely socks for you guys today. But in order to make a big enough yarn doll, they're probably going to have to go off the screen like that. So I'm going to have my toe hold on to the thing, and I'm just going to wrap it around like this. So when I wrap it around, I'm making an X shape. That way I have a sense of where the middle is when I'm done. And I do this several times. Might be easier if I leave the ball of yarn on the table so it can unroll on its own. Now I want to make it thick, but not thick. That way I can do the braiding. And the ball of yarn just escaped on the floor. That's going to make the next steps a little bit more difficult, but we'll see. I ended up making a lot of yarn dolls when I was in middle school as a result of this. And there's a lot of experimentation, and I had to figure out how to make it more durable because like any kid, I attempted to play with the dolls. And if you're a little bit too rough with the yarn dolls, they fall apart. So you gotta part of the things were figuring out how to make the yarn dolls more durable, and I added accessories to them. I made them clothes, and I had this distinct memory of giving them hair made out of thread and then wrapping the hair around wires and spraying the thread with hairspray and taking it out so the yarn doll could have curly hair. It made the thread very stiff, and sometimes the wire would rub off onto the thread, which was not ideal. And the yarn has now wrapped itself around the leg of the stool that I'm sitting on, which makes it harder to get. But I can't chase after it now because my feet are otherwise occupied. So this would still create like a very thin yarn doll. You can see. It's a great workout for your legs though. Oh, loop developed. We don't need a loop. Come out, little loop. Oop. Oh, the yarn did not like that. What happened here? Oh my gosh. All right, we're gonna have to detangle this guy because I really don't want to cut it. It's too early to be cutting the yarn. Oop. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think that's the hole right there. Oh, I think that's the loop. Oop. Oh, it's like even worse. Come on. What happened here? Ah. Oh, wait. I think I see it. Well, I'm not thrilled about doing this, but there is more than one solution to every problem. And this is not the solution I would have liked to have taken, but here we are. We're going to cut it. There's one end. We're going to cut it past the part where it's like starting to go on me. Actually, that made it go a little bit less. Gives me a little bit more. And we're going to tie it back together and hope that part does not show up in the yarn doll. There we go. Oh, it's towards the bottom. Good, good, good. Okay. Oh. And the yarn unwrapped itself from around the leg of the stool. You see, it's starting to get a little bit thicker now. Although I think this is going to end up being a very small yarn doll because I ended up choosing a thinner yarn than I typically would for this. But this was the fun yarn. Create like a nice color scheme. I ended up buying this yarn at a thrift store in Maine. I saw it and I was like, you know, when you see something in the store, it's like, I just gotta have it. This is meant for me. I saw this and it's like, I gotta have this yarn. I can make a lot of stuff with it. So I bought 12 skeins so I could do something with it. And since then I made a dress and a sweater and a blanket and I still have a couple skeins left. Because there ended up being a lot more yarn in that skein. And it's a nice texture yarn too. It's like silky and soft. It's not itchy whatsoever. I'm not the biggest fan of wool because even if it isn't actually itchy, psychologically I start thinking it's itchy. Okay. So I think we've reached the point where I'm going to do, yeah. I got enough to work with here. So I'm going to hold that here. And where's the scissors? There are the scissors. I'm going to cut it. Now, oh, if I can lift my legs up without falling down here. Ooh, you can see there's kind of like a part where the yarn's like going in the middle there. That's how I figure out where the middle's going to be. Now, this part I'm going to tie is going to be the top of the head of the yarn doll. So I'm actually going to wrap the yarn around it a couple times because this is the thing you don't want to break. And then I'm going to just tie a knot around. There you go. I'm just going to snip that off. Now this is where my leg's going to break. And the yarn just fell down. So I'm going to take this first part off of my foot. I'm going to hold the part where it like goes straight like this. I'm just going to put the scissors right in. It's going to be snip, snip, snip. There you go. And then we're going to go to the other side. Ow. I'm not as young as I used to be. My legs do not like that. Ow. Okay. Then I found the other part there. I'm just going to cut it again. Snip, snip, snip. There you go. And then where I tied the ribbon, I'm going to fold it in half. And, ooh, it's a little bit uneven, but we can work with that. So now I actually have to go retrieve the yarn ball that, like, fell down. Here we go. Fortunately, it didn't get very far. Okay, so now I got the yarn doll. And I kind of put my fingers through it to kind of like straighten it all out. And ooh, a little bit fell out. Just like that. And now I'm going to make the head. So I'm going to grab it like right where I want to tie it. And I'm going to take some string. I'm going to wrap the string around a couple times just so it's a little bit more secure. And then I'm going to tie a knot like I did up there. Just like that. Then we'll cut that off. Now from here, I don't know why I've decided like this, but I have always decided that where I tie the knot ends up being the front. I don't know why, I just do. Also, we can now, like typically I leave this longer if I'm going to add hair, but I'm not going to add hair to this guy. I'm just making the simple everyday yarn doll. But at this point, we're going to separate the arms from the legs. So I like to have it be relatively even. So we're going to do this. Going to do this, and we're going to see just a lot of it's just eyeballing it, which I think we got it here. Okay. It's going to hold this up, and now we're going to take the body. Going to get a little bit of a torso going. And we're going to wrap the yarn around the torso. In a very similar way, where we just wrap it around a couple times. Boom. Boom. And boom. There you go. And we're just going to tie the knot again. Get nice and tight. Now, if I wanted to make a yarn doll with a skirt, at this point what I would do is I would like choose an ending point for the skirt and like cut it off and like make it even on the bottom. But I don't typically like to do that because, I mean, Yarn dolls don't typically stand up, but it's impossible for them to stand up if they got a skirt. So at this point, I usually like to make the legs. I split it about in half as best I can. I still feel like I need to move a couple over. There we go. And then from here, I braid the legs. So I'm just going to straighten this out a bit. I'm going to split it into thirds. The one half of the leg here. Ooh. There we go. Let's make as tight of a braid as we can. And then when there's enough left, so this is like a nice length. In order to make it more durable, I try to make a big knot like this. But as I suspected, it's too thick. So I'm just going to wrap it around again. I can actually make it a little bit longer if I'm not going to do that. Just going to take that, we're going to wrap it around a couple times just to get that like tight secureness. So if it's like thin enough, I will actually like tie an overhand knot just to hold the braid together, because that holds better than what I'm doing now. But sometimes if it's just too thick, you just gotta do the same fastening as the leg and the torso. Although whatever you do for one limb, like I like to do for all the limbs. So now it's time for the other leg, and with this case, I now have a set length for the leg, so I like to double check as I'm braiding to make sure that I'm making the legs the same length, because otherwise you're going to end up with a bit of a Leaning Tower of Pisa type of doll, which is good if that's what you're going for, but I have a feeling that's probably not what you're going to be going for. So we're just going to straighten that all out. There we go. Just measuring it as we go along. So it's about the same length. Oh, there we go. We got it. So now we're just going to take this and wrap it around again. Going to tie the knot. Trim it there. Now, I took a lot of art lessons when I was younger about like related to drawing and like human proportions and things like that. I'm not sure how much of it stuck, but that's why I like to do the arms after the legs, because when you stand up as a human, I don't think you can see it, but like your arm ends midway down your thigh. So for the yarn doll, I like to have the arm go midway down the thigh instead of braiding the entire thing, because then you get more of a gorilla type of thing. Unless you want a gorilla. In that case, braid to your heart's content. I also figured out how to like make other animals too, like I think I figured out how to make an octopus and like some sort of, I forget if it was like a crab or a spider. Like I figured out how to make those as well. Pretty easy, honestly. There you go. So now you can see that's about the length that we want it. So at this point, what I would typically do is I would just go like this and just do it. But since we already did the tie thing for down below, we got to do the tie thing up here. Make it look cohesive. There you go. Then we cut that off. And much like how we did for the second leg, for the second arm, we're going to have to like eyeball it to make sure the arms are the same length. So we're going to split it into thirds again. I think I got it. There we go. I think maybe just like one more. Boom. Yeah, we got it. Okay. So we're just gonna hold that there, wrap the yarn around a couple times. Before we knot it up. And if you're curious at how I made clothes for these things, what I would do is I would like take a crochet hook and literally like crochet around the doll. And this was before I realized that there's a difference between the slip crochet and the single crochet. So it was like all slip crocheted clothing, thinking I was doing single crochet, and obviously it took forever. So there we have it. There's all the limbs made. And now what we're going to do is we're going to trim the extra look. Although if you're making a scarecrow, you can keep it like this, but usually I trim it off. So I just take it, I try to make it as neat as I can. And I trim it close enough, like that. And I try to make sure it's, like if I end up braiding it a little bit uneven, I will often make up for it when I trim this so it looks even after all. There you go. Now we'll hold on to it like this. We'll snip it off. And that had it about there, so we'll have it about there. Wait, let's measure that again and make sure we got it right. Yeah, okay. If it doesn't want to cut all in one go, just take baby steps. You can always neaten it out a little bit later, like loop, loop, loop. So we need neaten out too. Not quite. Okay. And there you have it. We have ourselves a yarn doll. Well, thanks for taking this trip down memory lane with me. Have a nice day.